Hey, welcome back to episode 8 of Building as We Fly, everyone. And today we have another special guest because we're embarking on our interview series, I guess, if you want to call it. So we're really excited to have Jennifer Rhoades with us from Renegade Fitness and Northwest Ohio Moms. She is someone that we've been connected to for over 10 years. Before we had Ava, we joined the gym at Renegade, and I've been a member pretty much since then. I think I took like a very small break because like logistically I just couldn't get there when Luke was traveling for work, but I'm now a member. Have my branding on, my little Renegade gear as well.
Oh, even more prepared than myself. Look at that
It's
up
a,
there.
you have the sign up there. But Jen and her husband Chris own Renegade Fitness together, and then they have a couple additional, I don't know, gigs, businesses.
Yeah,
Like
I mine takes just as much time, I think, as than the main one at this point. But yeah, his is a little more seasonal.
yeah, all good things though. And I don't know, I always feel like I'm so impressed with the professionalism that Jen and Chris have and like the level of service that they offer with the gym. And we really wanted to have them on to just share more about their story. And unfortunately, Chris couldn't join us today, but we have Jen and she's amazing. So I'm going to turn it over to her at this point to share a little bit about their background and how they got started.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for having me on this. So yeah, we've owned our business, our gym training business for 12 and a half years now. Um, Kind of fell into it. So I started as a personal trainer just now 15 years ago. We call it a big box gym, a gym you go in, you pay membership, you just go do things, and then there's trainers walking around. So started as that. That's how I met Chris, my husband and business partner. He also got brought in as a trainer, and worked alongside of each other, had crushes on each other, all that fun stuff. And through that, we started dating. We were both in a competitive realm in the sense of bodybuilding, so we connected over that. And then about a year or so into being a personal trainer at the gym, Chris and I started thinking a little bit longer term. Chris comes from a business family oriented or business oriented family. So his grandfather was really high up in GE, General Electric, worked with, now I'm not going to think of his name, but he's like the main guy that writes books and known for that. It'll come to me later in this interview. But so his grandpa was huge at building General Electric, kind of from the ground up. His father runs multiple businesses. So Chris kind of has always been exposed to that. And we saw in the realm of personal training this idea that people were starting to latch on to group fitness, or this idea of like doing workouts in a little bit larger than a one-on-one, but we knew the importance of still needing that individualized attention. So we started early to see there was going to be a shift in the industry. And we also were starting to catch on that the big guy was making a lot of money and we were doing all the work and not really making any of the money. So we actually had went on a spring break vacation together. Again, we're like not even a full year into dating, talking with his dad and grandpa about, how much money we're making. I taught some group classes at that big gym. So we started brainstorming, realistically, what if you held those classes on your own, and charged? How much now could you make versus when you're doing it through the gym? So we already started thinking kind of in an entrepreneurial mindset of, what are we doing? How is this going to get us somewhere? We were young. I believe he was 21, I was 22 at the time. And so we got really young. So we got the idea to just once a week, there was a church willing to give us space to host a workout. We would carry all their equipment, move all their chairs that they use for worship aside, and we would do that and then pack our equipment back up and head into the gym. So we were doing that and people would just, pay us cash. And that was just kind of our idea for a while, just kind of some side money. The gym we worked at caught on after a couple months that we were doing it. They saw a social media posts and we got let go, both got let go
Oh,
very
wow.
suddenly, like on a Friday night. We were done coaching our clients and they were like, by the way, you can't do that and we're going to let you go. So at that time, yeah, so we had just moved in together. It occurred to us all of a sudden Friday night at dinner, like, oh, wow, neither of us have an income.
Oh no.
Yes.
Wow.
We had to very quickly figure out what the heck we were going to do and build something very fast. We had about 8 or 10 people that came to the Saturday workout thing that we had. So we just, in our network of people, asked if people knew, where some space was. We started to look at in our area where we knew most of our clients were at already, if there was a space available, and there was a small garage that someone had been using as a car workplace. His grandfather loaned us. Our startup for our business was $3,000. He said, whatever that can get you in terms of equipment, whatever you think you need. So he gifted us that. And we bought, a few dumbbells. We bought some play school mats that you like connect, and put down in your kids' playroom. And we spent a weekend cleaning up this garage, getting oil up, painting, and put mats down and
Wow.
whatever we could buy with $3,000. And that was our business startup in a kind of garage somewhere with 8 or 10 people. And we just kind of slowly grew that from there. And I mean, that's been a whole, 12.5 year production of learning and starting with, punch cards and then realizing, that wasn't a sustainable business model. And then learning from there, okay, membership base is a better way. And then, branching out into different program offerings, building up staff and now staff education. Again, it just, grows like any business. But that was kind of our origin story. We were trainers that kind of met up and fell in love and kind of just got shoved into the route of, okay, now you need to start a business. It was a very long-term goal that, we tossed around on a spring break, but didn't think that a few weeks later we were going to kind of be forced into it. So I was in school for something completely different. So yeah.
Wow. I know. I didn't realize all of that.
Yeah. And very young. I mean, to think of myself at, 20, 21 and 22, the idea of starting a business with your boyfriend, that was kind of a huge leap of faith, but, it worked out.
Yeah.
So.
That's crazy.
I know. And so I guess too, like I come from like the relationship side of it too, of like, how is being in business because we're like working so closely together now. When I said 5 years ago, like I would never want to work with you.
That's like not just 5 years ago, but like the whole time we've been married.
Never. I just couldn't do it. And now here we are.
She heard me on calls, like she would hear me on calls and she's like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe you talk to people that way. And I was pretty, to be fair, like 10 years ago, I was very crude and very rough around the edges. So anyway.
Now I'm sometimes like, I can't believe you said that. But he's definitely like, he's, mature, right? So anyway.
Things are learning. When I think of how I managed people even 4 years ago versus how I manage people now, it is something that, but to you guys, you hear Luke and Luke hears you. That's a benefit because then we'll go home and, he'll say like, hey, that was kind of like, oh, I wouldn't have said it that way. Or so we do, it's good or bad. You're always kind of working, but at the same time, you have a relationship where you're pretty comfortable with telling them anything and everything. So he can be, early on, he was like, people are scared of you. And you need to like change that. I actually flew to New York City one year. I was pregnant to do a weekend management course because he's like, people are terrified of you and you can't be that way.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Was this early on? Because was it like an adjustment period? Like were there like rocky periods where it's like you guys are like not on great terms or like you're not like in a good spot because I know for us, like it's been in the beginning, it's been like a little bit like trying to figure it out together, like how we talk, how we communicate, how we bring the bad news up. So like, did you ever run into like, was it always like pretty easy to talk to each other or were there like disconnects and like, stressors?
Yeah, I think early on it was very easy because it was just so there wasn't a lot of other people, right? So like he was already used to how I talk to him or I'm used to how he talks to me. But it was like later, when we started bringing on staff and now you have to learn how to talk to them. So for my work relationship, it was always my significant other. So I could just tell him like it is, right? So it's different than when now it's like, well, you have to talk differently with these other people. So, and then we have a difference of opinion sometimes. And I think that's hard to navigate because I don't know if you guys do this, but then I take it personal in the sense of, oh, well, do you feel about that way about me all the time? Or so it is, you have to separate, like, no, that's just your thoughts on my business idea, not so much, my day-to-day ideas. But yeah, there is some learning, and we've had to learn when to talk to each other. I think that's when you are always with someone, when to say like, hey, when we're making dinner, that's not a good time to talk about, the meeting that we had at work. Like, I'm not going to remember, or, telling me what needs to happen tomorrow, like for work while I'm taking care of 3 children. Like, that's not the time.
Yeah.
So it is learning to separate and have those boundaries of like, he could work all day, every vacation. And I'm like, I have to separate it.
Yeah.
So,
That sounds familiar.
All day, every day.
Yeah, like I feel like I could do that too. Chris and I are probably pretty like in that sense. I to give Kirsten some credit, I feel like she's very good about like not bringing things up in certain, like we go out to dinner and then she's like, okay, let's talk through some things that like we didn't have like dedicated time, to your point. Like we're at home running through things, logistics, and running around and like texting back and forth is usually not a good solve if you have some sort of like feedback or like constructive criticism, we'll call it.
Yeah.
So I'll give Kirsten credit. Like she's very good about like making a mental note of it. And then like if we go on a walk together or like we go out to dinner together, which we haven't done much of that lately because of the weather and the kids. But yeah, so I definitely give Kirsten like a lot of credit because I can totally understand what you mean by that. And I'm more like off the cuff. Well, I'll just say stuff and then I'll like, uh-oh, this is not good now.
yeah.
I have something to learn about in that area. That's for damn sure. Because yeah, I'm very similar, I think, to Chris in that way.
Being in work mode, right? Like in the being plugged in piece of it, like sometimes it's just easier, I think, for you, like, if he's working in the basement and he comes up and he's like, oh, I'm still in work mode because I just was on a meeting and now Kirsten, I want to talk to you about this thing. I'm like you said, Jen, I'm like in the middle of like making dinner. All the kids have been running around me for an hour. Like I'm not there. So like, can we talk about this another time? Can we compartmentalize it? That sort of thing. So
yeah,
it's very different. I think anything with like, I think it goes back to the woman, man kind of brain role, or, whoever's kind of the head of household. It doesn't have to be man, woman, but whoever kind of is in charge of all those things. So I wear that hat primarily for all the home stuff as well. So it is probably similar to you, Luke and Chris. He can be in a work mindset all the time because that's his main thing he has to worry about. But when I'm done with those work tasks, I'm like, but now I have to think about speech class and gymnastics and school bags and, and he just doesn't have that. So it's very easy for a person that's not handling that stuff too, when you're working with your partner, for them to just, be like, well, why can't we just do that now?
Right.
And the person that's wearing all those hats, you're like, well, because I'm wearing 10 hats right.
Yeah.
And I just can't be effective at all of them at one time. So you do have to space stuff out.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We can totally relate to that. I mean, I'm sure Kirsten can more than I, but like she's like, Luke, like you have to like pay attention. Like you like this, and this is happening. And like I'm like, oh, okay. Like she like has to catch me up sometimes or like call me out and be like, Luke, like wake up, basically get out of your work mode.
Yeah.
So that happens from time to time where I'm just like so like singled in on it. She's like, wake up, like we have kids, like, anyway.
When we talk entrepreneurship, I will say that's something that gets, I think people don't understand. So if people are watching that, you're thinking about work and stuff as an entrepreneur, and every position is going to be different. Every job's going to be different, based off of what you're in charge of. But I think especially when you are the main runner of that business, it's a smaller company, you kind of are always in your business. Like there's not really a one time, like we are closed on Sundays, but we're still thinking about, are things ready for Monday? Is this like there's never a day we're not in your business in some capacity. I think when you are an entrepreneur, you're always thinking, or even when you're, on vacation, something comes up and you're like, oh, that would be a great idea for this. Or I think, small business owners, entrepreneurs, I don't think you're ever not on in some capacity, I think.
And that actually was bringing up a question that I had for you about like burnout in general, right? Because like you've been doing this way longer than we've been doing this. So have you guys experienced burnout together, separately at different times? Like how have you navigated through some of that? Because you're running multiple businesses. We're always on as small business owners, like you said. So what does that look like for you guys?
For sure, we get burnout. That's where some of the evolution of our business, again, early on, we did we wore all the hats. We're really blessed to be a part of some mentor groups and business groups that then we were able to learn, like, hey, you need to have people to delegate things to. It was hard early on to take a hat off and not put that hat back on and want to like, hey, I know you're in charge of this, but let me also help you with it type thing. So it's been an evolution with that in ownership of a business of, okay, but I don't do that anymore and that's okay. I'm going to focus over here. That's helped some of the burnout aspect because again, we're not doing all the things all the time, but there's definitely moments we have like our doomsday afternoon where you're like, oh my gosh, are we ever going to take a vacation, A, without kids, and B, and not have to worry about something happening
Yeah.
at our business. So we still have those days. Us taking on separate side jobs and businesses has been very helpful in that because it gives us something else to talk about even. So we've both been, because we have other people in our first business in Renegade Fitness to wear some hats, there are days where we can step away and focus on another business that we each have. So I have an online mom resource for our area. He got really into photography, so he does that on the side for his kind of own outlet. And I think that's helped with burnout to have our own outlets. So that way too, and again, you guys live together, work together now, to have something else to talk about.
Yeah.
We found like when we would go out to dinner, it was just, okay, do we talk about our jobs some more, even though we just did that all day? Or, so it's nice to have different outlets. So even if it's not a business, I think it's so important for entrepreneurs to have some sort of hobby, some sort of outlet that is completely separate from what you do all day. Even for us, our physical outlet hobby of working out is directly tied to our business of watching people work out and helping people work out. So it's good to have something that's just completely different to focus on now and then and isn't kid related too, that fills our cup, not again as parents filling someone else's cup with the kids stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. That's a great point. Having something additional besides work that gives you time, because I think as small business owners, I mean, to like the point earlier too, of like, it's hard for us to prioritize doing anything besides building the business and making sure the business is being sustainable, right? And we don't even we don't have time to go to go on a run or whatever, but he does.
Yeah.
It's important to prioritize those things and break away from work. I know Luke prioritizes his men's mentorship group, they have calls once a week, that sort of thing that he could probably easily blow off, but
Well, yeah, they're always encouraging us to play more, kind of just be like a kid, right? To your point, have an outlet, just enjoy it. Because it's very easy for me to get really buried in stress and everything else where I'm like, oh my gosh, we have to do this person and we need to do this project. So yeah, it's a very healthy outlet for me for sure. Because they always encourage me, like Luke, you need to pay attention to your relationship pillar is what we call it. You need to adventure and just play a little bit more because they're way too serious, So
yeah,
it's definitely been helpful. I think the community aspect, and they're all mostly entrepreneurs as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been super, super beneficial. I think I've been in that group almost a year now. So anyway.
Yeah.
Groups are great for that. And two, because that's your thing. Again, it ties back into, again, whether it's a spouse or a business partner, having something separate. So my husband has his business group that I'm not even allowed to be a part of because they want that person to be able to speak freely. Again, he can bring the facts, he can bring, this is what we need to work on. There's no, well, but I think this, so he just has his group, it's his people. They do quarterly meetups around the country. I think that's been a huge benefit for him because when he is in that point of getting burnout, getting overwhelmed, he has that group to touch base with to kind of bring him back. Like you said, they check in with, how's your personal life? How's business? Let's work through some things. Or I think that's, if someone can have that as an entrepreneur, some sort of mentorship group, business group, someone that's going to understand what you're going through, understand the stresses that it brings, but then can also be a sounding board for, someone on the outside looking in type thing is beneficial.
Totally.
Yeah, I built basically I built in I'm in two, almost three different groups now, I guess, where that's just part of like the business cost, which is like mentorship and like coaching and things like that. Because I think to your point, that is like that has been like monumental for me. I have like a sales coach. He's like the bomb. He's been in sales for like decades, I'm sure, like at least a decade. And like it's just to your point, really good to have that external perspective because you can get really stuck on your own if you're like trying to work a problem by yourself, or even like with your like partner. It's like it could go in circles basically, where you're just like, gosh, I feel like I'm going anywhere. We're like not making any progress, and it can be very frustrating. So yeah, I definitely agree that like having that and also having that privacy too. It's like because to your point, it's like Chris probably feels like safe. He can probably share anything or say anything, and they're not going to judge him. And I think it's good to have that like outside of your marriage because it's like sometimes like, hey, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm thinking. It doesn't seem quite right, but this is how I feel, right? And like work through
Yeah.
that point in like a safe setting, which is like kind of funny because kind of like a recovery concept for like, addicts and stuff like that, where it's like we need to create a safe space for the brain to like change and transform and be, evolve basically over time. So that's a really legit point, and it's good. It's good to be part of that as well.
And think about like the mentorship piece with you guys too, even having family members that helped serve as mentors from the get-go for you guys, like that is really, I think, interesting too, that, Chris's dad and grandpa kind of helped push you outside of your comfort zone initially of like, hey, go, like this might be cool for you to try this. And then, they supported you as you had to step into this whole new career path because of, kind of played out with the big box gym and everything. Do you feel like you're talking about work all the time, even with like Chris's family too?
Yeah. You go to the lake for 4th of July and you end up at the table talking business and numbers. And that's where, again, the burnout, it's like, oh my gosh, here we go. Like, I just want to have a drink and sit back. But again, to your point, it's good because any kind of outside takes away emotion. So that's where Chris has really helped me. And maybe it's because I'm female, whatever. I'm a very emotional person. So sometimes my decision making first starts from the emotional side. So, what do I feel or what do I think people will feel or whatever? And Chris has been really good. And I think, and it's through being in these groups because these outsiders don't have an emotional attachment to your business. So he's been really good at helping me understand, like, you're reacting from an emotional side. Like, let's think of this from just facts. Like, what are the facts? What are the hardcore numbers? What's the if then, this type thing. So he's helped me grow in that then I can apply again to, now my second business and mentoring other people. But I think having those external, so whether it's his dad and grandpa, business groups, it's outsiders take away the emotion side of things and they can give it to you straight. Like, I know you feel that way, but the numbers support this. So I don't know what to tell you type thing. So yeah.
That's a great point. Take the emotion out of it.
Yeah, I think even and this is just like on that point too, is that like that's why like the men's group I'm in, not to like boost them up too much, but
I was gonna say, let's just talk about coaching. I mean, dude, my whole business is based off coaching people. So I guess, it's fitness. You're never gonna do it on your own as good as you could with someone telling you what to do.
yes, 100% agree. That is very true. Like I know even like some of the guys in the group, like there's another like coach in the group, and they're like, yeah, I need accountability. I need someone to hold me true to what I said, what I say I'm going to do, and then did I do it? So, but yeah, I think also like the part for me is like the relationship aspect too. Is like it's to your point, it's hard not to be emotional about the business, and it's hard not to like bring that into like the marriage or like bring it home basically with you. So like they've been very good about like, dude, like one time one of the guys was just like, hey, like you're like the way you're like thinking about like your wife or like the way you're approaching that is like totally off basically. This is not the way to think about it. You should be thinking about this way or feel like this way. So like, yeah, they just call you out. Like I love that. It's like they just call you out like, hey, that's just not correct. Like that's just not okay. And I'm like, oh,
yeah.
Okay. It's even about the relationship. It's not even about the business. And I'm like, wow, all right. So I need to like set stuff straight. So
Which that's hard. That's hard to accept from a business partner / then when you have an emotional attachment to them. I struggle with not taking everything personal or like my feelings getting hurt, type thing. So I think that's probably our biggest struggle is what he's been very good at learning to just be kind of factual, and I still am like
well, we're emotional creatures. Like, what are you gonna do? Like at the end of the day, I think we're all like still have emotions tied to things, right? So it's like very hard to, especially when like your business partner is like your husband or your wife, right?
That's something
So
that I think I have always struggled with is like when people will say like, oh, it's just business. And I'm like, but business is so intimately connected to relationships and how
People.
people connect also. So it's hard to just be like, oh, well, it's just business, so don't take it personally. I'm like, but like this could impact me in many other ways personally. So I am gonna take so
Yeah.
balance for each of us, I think is hard, it's just a learning curve for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's okay.
Do you want to hear more too about like your Northwest Ohio moms and what drove, embark on that path as well? So wanted to give some space for you to talk about that.
I bought that business at the end of 2022. It was it's a hyper local resource for moms, technically parenting, but we gear it towards moms. So all of our humor is mom humor, things like that. All of our contributors are local moms in our area. It's kind of a twofold business. One, it's connecting moms and families with resources. So whether that's events on the weekends, things happening at the libraries, talking about new businesses that are going to come into the area that they should know about that could benefit kids, families, moms. And then on the other side, the business side is really we're a marketing platform for local businesses. So we've created the network and space that's going to reach a target market for then those businesses. So it saves them on marketing, so we can offer it to them at a cheaper rate than, say, an ad space in a newspaper. I saw a huge benefit in it on the sense of, as a small business owner, I don't want to drop $1,000 on a small square in a newspaper that's sitting at a coffee shop that I don't know if it's hitting my target market. I don't know, that logo in the newspaper doesn't tell anybody about my business.
Mm-hmm.
And again, seeing that, our day and age is social media, it's video, it's connecting with people. So from that aspect, I know that this is a platform that can offer other businesses a place to explain who they are, what they are, how they benefit our target market. So I saw the benefit on the business side of, hey, I can offer something to local people that I know will help them, and I feel comfortable offering that. And then at the same time, I'm a mom, and I liked the resource myself when I was just, consuming it, and I didn't want it to go away when I knew the owner was going to sell it. So, and I had ideas of how it could be better. So I was approached. Originally, she was looking for a partner. I didn't feel like we would be good partners. So at the time, that opportunity kind of went to the wayside, and then it later kind of came up. She was going to be moving, can't run a local business when you're not here. So again, the offer to purchase it came, and again, just we're business people now, and it was a good business opportunity. So, there's a point for us with our original business. The money that comes in, because we're one household sharing that business, we're kind of splitting that income. So in the sense of, our business model with the gym, usually when there's one owner, they're taking, a decent amount home that's supporting a family. And not that we're not supporting our family, but when now you're married and joining it, that income now is split. There's not that second person bringing another income in. So
good
we
point.
then saw it. Yeah. So
Yeah,
you guys
thought
know.
about it that way. No, that's a good point. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, an owner makes this much. Well, now we're separating it. And there's, no spouse that you go home to that also is a nurse in the hospital bringing home an income. My husband reminds me of that. All his business people, all their wives are like nurses and, doctors. And he's like, they're bringing a whole other income in. So we split that. So I saw it as a business opportunity. I still have to do a lot for the business. I can't just go get another job. I can't go back to school. I can't. And it was just a really great opportunity that I could invest in something that I could grow and do while still working, the first business. And I felt I could do both. So yeah, so I looked at it, again, it's an opportunity, and I didn't want it to go by. So, and now it's giving me an outlet outside of my first.
Yeah.
Right.
So as you were talking, when you mentioned that the previous owner had asked you to be a partner and you like declined that opportunity, it just sparked a thought in my mind of like kind of staying true to like your boundaries and like what feels right to you as a business owner also. So I thought that was really interesting because you know, some people might have just been like, oh, I'm going to jump at the opportunity because I want that extra income. And they're so money focused, but I thought it's, you know, maybe important to point out that money isn't always everything. And while that would have maybe benefited you financially at the time, having that boundary where you said, like, this just doesn't feel like it would work.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna, you know, not move forward at this point. And then it did ultimately work out down the road, but
Yeah. It still has to fulfill you, right? Like if you're not getting any fulfillment from what you're doing, I mean, sure, sometimes we have to do things that we don't want to do because that's just how you provide. So I always say, you know, that whole adage, like, oh, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. Well, sometimes we just have to do things we don't want to do.
right.
And as an entrepreneur, that's the number one thing I think anybody has to realize, especially early on when you are doing so much. It's like, just because you don't want to do it doesn't mean like it has to get done. So you got to do it. But yeah, in that sense, it's like, well, I know we're not going to agree on things. I know, you know, sometimes you don't want to be tied to an individual. Like it's just as easy as that. You're like, I don't want anything that you do affecting me. Or again, when you're talking about a second business, like that could drastically affect my first one. And, you know, those are things you have to consider. So yeah, it wasn't right then. And it was okay to step away. But then sometimes, you know, because you stepped away, an even better opportunity comes, and I was able to just acquire the whole dang thing.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is definitely impressive, I'd say. I think to Kirsten's point, like there's definitely a lot to say there. Because like, yeah, it's so easy to be like, oh yeah, like it's shiny object syndrome, I would say. And yeah, I feel like you have to have a lot of like, especially in entrepreneurship, I feel like you have to have a lot of confidence or just a lot of discernment about like what's right and what's not and like your gut kind of deal. It's like not even logical, but it is definitely more just what you feel is true and aligned with like who you are and like what you're about and whether or not, like to your point, you think that could work. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
something that is encouraged highly in my group is like just be true and money is like you should put the money aside and be like no, it's just about what I feel is right and wrong, not about like, oh, I can make like $100,000 doing this. It's like, okay, but is that what you want to be doing? Does that ring true to you? Do you feel aligned with that? Like to your point, like I think you felt very aligned with the group itself, right? Being a mom and being in Northwest Ohio. I'm sure it was even harder to say no in the beginning. So
It was, yeah. No, and with you, that sparked an idea, the whole idea of like, you know, yes, it could make you money, but this is how I feel. That was a huge thing very early on. Chris jokes about it, and we both know it. That's not something I could have ever done, but everybody's aware of, you know, beach or these MLM type situations at the first gym we worked at, back when that whole thing got started, like before it hit the ground running. I was actually presented to kind of start in that route, right? With like the idea of, you know, being a beach body coach and all that stuff. And I mean, this could work for anything. And at the time I was like, oh yeah, you can make all this money. And actually I look, there are people that I was friends with, close with in that realm. They are making way more money than I make now, and they live a very different lifestyle. And I was presented with the same opportunity at the same time, but it was something that just deep down in my soul, I could not buy into what they were putting out there. Like given my profession and given things, it's like I cannot sit back and drink that Kool-Aid and feel comfortable with myself just to make money. Like, sure, I could have made a lot of money and maybe my life would be a little easier, you know, in the sense of like, you know, you don't have certain, but maybe not. But it is, to your point, like money isn't everything. And if you really truly don't believe it, or if you have to tell yourself, like, I'm going to believe it just for this, you know, this paycheck, like, it's just not worth it. And that's a huge thing that in my life, I always kind of think back. I'm like, gosh, if I could have just, you know, bought into, if I would have just, you know, and you're like, no, it's not true to me, you know?
yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, no, I can't make other people believe something that I truly don't believe. So yeah.
Totally. I mean, you think about like how many people are like higher ups at a corporation and making how much money and like they're unhappy in their job. Like it all translates, you know, I think it just translates over to if you are a small business owner and you own your own business, it's like there could always be something that you opt into for more money. But I think ultimately most of us do what we do because we want it to align with who we are as people.
Yeah.
Right. And so it kind of goes back to like that foundational, like, I'm doing something, it maybe because I love it, but also because I do feel like it aligns with who I am as a person. So
Yeah, like I guess I could have stayed at General Motors and kept doing that job. And like it was definitely like lower stress and much easier to do attending meetings and delegating all the work basically versus wearing all these freaking hats, right? Like I could have done that, but like literally deep in my heart, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Like I'm not going anywhere, you know? So definitely can relate to that a lot. It's like, yeah, okay, for the money, for the comfort, and everything else, like I could have stayed there, but it's just like, it didn't make it in my heart. I'm like, I just know I have to go. I have to take this opportunity. So yeah, definitely can relate to that as far as like the money and everything else. It's like sometimes you have to like take a step back to take a step forward or just take a step back because it's not about the money, to your point. It's not about the finances. It's about like how you feel about that group or that cause or whatever you kind of get aligned with. So anyway,
Yeah.
I digress.
So I think we're pretty over on time, but I do have a final question because I wanted to hear if you guys, in regards to like planning goals for yourselves, that sort of thing, since you have been in business a lot longer than we have, I feel like we're still like firefighting a lot. So how are you?
It's still early.
Yeah, but I know that like with Chris being in the mentorship that he's in, and I know you guys have talked about like some intentional goal planning that you've done in the past, and what does that look like for you guys? Do you like project your next couple of years? Like how do you work through all of that?
So sometimes he has like quarterly things. So we'll set quarterly goals, whether that, an income or money base for the business, whether that sometimes it has to shift to more of a staff development type thing. If we, sometimes it's just reflecting like, okay, where are the holes? What is causing? So if there is a fire or a stress that's coming up regularly, like, okay, what's causing that? Maybe that needs to be our focus and not growth. So we actually spent our previous year, it really wasn't a growth in the sense of our own income or anything like that. It was really a growth for our staff and our team. How do we make sure that they're growing, whether it's, knowledge base or whatnot? Maybe it is a financial, like how do we make sure that our team is getting to where they need to be? And we'll do that through quarterly meetings so that way we're touching base with our team to know, where are they sitting, where, personal, whether it's their career base, like just kind of knowing our team to know, okay, what can we be doing to facilitate them? So goal setting will shift based off that. If we can see where like, hey, we're running around because of a staffing issue, okay, that needs to be our focus, not a numbers growth thing. So goals will shift based off that. Now we feel really comfortable in that area and it can go back to a growth in the sense of the business because now, again, if the business is growing, opportunities for our staff grows. And it just keeps trickling down. So we'll set goals that way. Sometimes it depends on, we just hit a lease re-signing time. So sometimes, you're set for 5, years or so. You can be cool. And then when it starts to run out, so goal setting has to be, maybe leases are changing, increasing. Do we need to be looking for a new thing? Again, Chris is very good at looking ahead and forecasting. Again, I'm very like, we're in January, we're in the second week, my kids have no school, I'm very like kind of in the moment and he's very good at, okay, where do we need to be in August or where do we need to be? So he's really good at setting kind of more those rocks for each quarter for us. And then, and that's probably the only reason why we survived COVID, to be honest, is because he was really good at looking ahead of like, okay, we need to do something and something's going to happen. Like before we knew things were going to shut down, he was like, this is what's going to happen. So we need to be thinking ahead. So I'll give him the credit for our goal setting in the business.
Yeah. I feel like through COVID, you guys excelled over some other, and I mean, I think I had a conversation with Chris at one point about just how many gyms did shut down during COVID because of COVID, but
Yeah.
that you guys were able to still provide, training and services to your members. People stayed alongside you. You were really transparent throughout the entire, process. I think that just ties into like, the professionalism that you guys offer to the area too with the gym of like, you are a small business, you're going to articulate what you're going to provide to your members so that they're getting benefit out of it. But you also want people to know like they're supporting your livelihood. Cause I remember kind of like that being, a highlight point for you guys of like, we want to still be here through COVID.
Yeah.
Stay with us,
Yeah.
we're still
That's
gonna.
I think that any small business, that's like a number one thing for us is, and we always pay attention, like when we're going to go somewhere or, spend our money in a place or have someone, be someone that's providing a service to us. That's something we always look at, like what's communication like? What, how are you showing up right from the get-go? And that's something that then we've tried to always, even, being young in the beginning, and I guess we're a lot older now, but just always like showing that you are professional and that you are responsible, and just like any relationship, communication. And we feel as a business, we have a relationship with the people we're serving. So we need to be communicating to them, just like any relationship needs that communication. And that's something that we've seen locally. Some businesses do some things, and, we just a local place here, they moved, shut down their location, moved, and people were like, I didn't even know you guys were closing your doors. I didn't even know you were, and that's where that business probably could have saved some customers if they would have simply said, like, hey, at the end of this month, we're going here. We'd love to have you follow us. It's just about communication. And I think that's where I think we do really well with, we're just constantly communicating with people, like, hey, we're switching service or our client management software. We let people know over a month in advance of, like, hey, we're going to be doing this, and like, okay, now here's step one, here's step two, and really just slowly rolling people into things. But yeah, sorry, that was a long-winded answer to say, like, communication as a small business is, I think, number one, because to your point, like, then people, we respect that, right? So even if there's a hiccup in a business, or you're like, gosh, I really thought I was going to have this for you by this time. I apologize, this came up. I think people can relate to that. We can relate to humans and relate to, like, we're not perfect. And I think if you can be transparent with people, I think then people respect that and appreciate that, and they're much more willing to either stay or, again, stay with you as a customer or client long term, if you're just treating them like with kindness and respect with communication.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's also definitely something we've been working on. Like I hired someone extra and basically like realized, hey, like none of our clients are getting updates like on a regular basis. So I'm like, that's really bad. We just communicate in a very like splotchy way. And I'm like, that's not going to fly as we grow. So like we basically have like we decided, hey, every single week, doesn't matter if we have no updates or not, like we're going to update the client. Hey, this is where we're at. This is what we did. This is what we're going to do. And then to your point, communicate, oh, we had a hiccup or we had an issue, or we couldn't get to it this week, but we'll get to it next week. So yeah, totally agree with that. Definitely something I realized like pretty early on as we were like growing. And I'm like, holy crap, we have all these people. To your point, a lot of people in the business, it's like I need to tell them, I need to be communicating to them, because then the communication just tends to get worse as you grow, right? So
yeah,
totally hear that point for sure. And that's definitely agreed. Something that's very important to us as well. So
Totally.
anyway.
Great.
Well,
thank you so much.
I know, this is great.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, good. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Of course, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and yeah, just let us know. Let us know.
And follow all of Jen's handles. I'll put those in the notes and comments and all the things so that you guys can follow Renegade Fitness. You can follow Northwest Ohio Moms. You can follow Blue Eye Photography. That's Chris's photography business. And
Dex Tech.
And Dex Tech, of course. And then there's my Curse to Toll Consulting as well. I'll throw in there. But anywho, thanks everybody for joining us. Thank you, Jen, for being here. And we will see you all soon.
Later.